So this is Novillo. Novillo is an app for the iPad that lets graphic storytellers bring a new kind of life to the drawings that they tell their stories with. In this screen capture from the actual running app, the user is swiping vertically up the right-hand side, not that it matters. And as they do, a series of transformations affect the lines and shapes that make up the composition on screen. A composition in Novillo is basically the equivalent of a panel in a graphic novel. When the reader swipes to the end of the current composition, Novillo automatically presents the next composition in the storyline. So in this case, you'll see the woman from the crowded train platform now sitting bereft on her suitcase. Presumably the crowd has left, and she's stuck. So we've begun to tell a story. Now, this next screen capture is from an earlier point in the process of creating a finished composition like the one you saw, in fact, the one you just saw. So if you look at the upper right corner, you can see a number in a little lozenge up there that's changing, and that indicates where in the storyline we are. It corresponds to how much swiping the user is doing, and that's very close to what you do in an ebook anyway, so that's the model. The point of this screen capture was, from my testing point of view, was just to affirm that the latest coding that I've been working on had made the swiping process more fluid and responsive. Novillo is an app, it's in development, and so things are always changing and they need to be tested, so I captured this while I was doing that. Now the process of activating drawings in the way you've seen, which didn't happen in this current version, it's before we started that process, but to get to that point is not that complicated. So this is the starting point, the sequence we just looked at, for the sequence that we saw at the very beginning. So here the composition is presented as it was imported, and swiping just carries us along a set timeline to the next composition, to the next composition, to the next composition. This next screen capture, it happens in between the two. So we have the finished product and we have the starting point. And what we led off with was sort of just making sure it was there. I've sped this up a lot, and the focus on what I'm doing here is to cause the lines that make up the characters on the screen to draw themselves off. So they kind of erase themselves, but not by fading out, but rather by actually drawing from their endpoints back to their beginning points till they're not there anymore. In Novillo, as part of the aesthetic effects you can get, the creator of the Novillo has, which is what we call the products of it as well, has complete control over individual line drawing, as well as their line thickness and color and the opacity of the objects on the screen and so forth. But this drawing effect is probably the most important part. And it's tied to the swiping motion of the user. So you can see I'm swiping a bit, testing, and then going back and adding more features or changing the features. So in this, again, heavily accelerated playback, you can see the interface is appearing periodically, and the composition itself, the lines for the characters are changing, the characters are drawing off, leaving the white or beige spaces behind them that define where they were. So that was that effect got, and I was really happy with that. And that, again, that was speeded up 10 or 20 times, so it took quite a long time. But then again, there was a lot more going on because I'm actually writing code as I do this. The drawing on and drawing off process is actually really easy to control, and the areas affected correspond to layers or some type of groups that are in the digital drawings that you import into Novillo. This allows you to have a very fine-grained control over what actually changes, but still allowing multiple things to change at the same time. So you can group all the lines in a face together or all the lines in a figure together, which is what we see here, as well as in layers going back to the background. The next effect I wanted was the equivalent of the line drawing off, but for the shapes that define the characters. So here we go, same interface, using a different set of settings. I used, again, the same tools, but with, and again, it's sped up here. So it's fairly quick to get the effect that I was looking for. You may be able to make out as this begins to work, as the shapes finally do fade off completely, they leave a kind of faint ghosted outline behind them because there's still a stroke on each one of those. That wasn't actually the effect that I was looking for, and I can remove that with Novillo, but I like the look. So what I decided to do was go back to the lines and leave some of them, or leave them partly on screen at the end as well. So this is my third pass through now. I did the lines to take them off, I did the shapes to fade them out, and now what I'm doing is I'm going back again to get the final effect, where along with and just after, sort of in a cascading effect, the fading away of the shapes, the lines now, or sorry, just before, the lines now draw off, but still leave about 25% of what they originally were on the screen. So this leaves a kind of a nice texture on the screen, I think, that is really evocative. It gives us a message about what was there, and the kind of ghostly remains of it, to me, are kind of like what the character themselves might remember, or the kind of echo, if you know what I mean, of the past presence of people in a crowded space. If you look at what we're doing here, you can probably figure out that Novillo can share elements between compositions. And in fact, this drawing that we see here is actually made up of 3 separate drawings, each existing as a separate file, but with registration marks that align them with each other. And that's what Novillo can do very easily. It can take drawings of any size, amalgamate them together onto the screen into a composition. That's why we call them compositions. So the clock and the platform are common, the suitcase is common, and the girl changes, and the crowd disappears, and the train disappears. So we can construct new drawings out of the components of other drawings that we've already used in Novillo and reuse them endlessly. There's a lot more that Novillo can do, and in this early demo of Novillo, I'm really just focusing on the mechanics of assembling compositions into narrative sequences. And I think you can see that even with just the 2 that we have here, a story is beginning to be told. We need to know more. Who is this girl? What is she waiting for? Why is she stuck on the platform? But still the message is getting across, and it's getting across with a new kind of aesthetic that Novillo provides. Novillo is also built to provide a distribution system for your stories, which is to say that you can publish directly from Novillo out into the world, and people with a reader for Novillo can read the stories with the same effects. It also acts as a system for collaboration, so writers can work with illustrators, can work with colorists, can work with lettering specialists. It also has its own system of monetization associated with the distribution system, but it also works like a kind of a Patreon system for allowing you to build an audience as you're writing your story. You can show them the updates, you can get the feedback, you can build a community around yourself and your story, and you can monetize that if you want to. You don't have to. Everything that Novillo does reflects 10 years of working on graphic novel projects that, to be blunt, did not come to fruition because I was searching for a better way to publish them that suited the way I worked, how I wanted to express things. And my kind of reaction, I guess, against the old school, entirely, pulpy paper and India ink vibe of the graphic novel world. I don't romanticize that so much. I like the digital world, and this is a digital product. So I've been working for the last year on Novillo to bring this to this level. I've published a few YouTube videos about the progress, but nobody's seen them, and basically it's all been pretty much underneath the radar. Now I'm interested in reaching a community who might want to explore its possibilities as creators, as readers, or maybe something else. If this is you, and leave me a comment, a message. Let's start a conversation about what you're interested in and if we can work together. Okay, that's it. Thanks very much for watching. My name is Dan. I'm the creator of Novillo. You'll be seeing more that will be more about Novillo as it matures, because where we are now is Novillo is becoming very much something that will soon be in some form of beta release, and that's a big landmark, big milestone for me. Thanks again for watching.